to the Metabolic Wisdom podcast. As you can see, I'm in my Saturday, and this honestly goes and aligns a little. So I thought it was pretty authentic for me to come outside and film while I'm sunbathing. And today I want to talk about the foundational beliefs I have around our physical bodies. And the reason that this is so important, of course, is because when we're thinking of health and being and becoming a fully feminine woman, fully embodied woman who is in her in her highest feminine self, I guess you could say. And when we're thinking about being a woman who's truly healthy, metabolically, hormonally, all the things, we really need to think about the foundation. And when I was preparing for this episode, which I have prepared for this episode, when I was preparing for this episode and what I wanted to say when it came to the most foundational things about the body, there's a quote by this 1900s, 1800s philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche, and he was a German philosopher all about studying individuality and things like that. And he has a quote that I think is just so profound and so true, and it is that there is more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. And what we're kind of talking about here is that our bodies are fully capable of so much more than we give them credit for, but our bodies actually tell a story. And I truly believe that our bodies connect with our subconscious and is trying to tell us something deeper about what is going on the inside, because the nervous system and the body and the mind and the spirit are so highly connected. I would say that when we're thinking about the physical body and we're thinking about the nervous system, I would have to say that it's my true belief that the nervous system is kind of like a portal, for lack of a better term, honestly. It's like a portal going from not so physical, so the spiritual side, your subconscious, your thought life, your thought pattern, the things that are a little bit, would it be metaphysical or just not physical? It's a portal between that and your physical body, your nervous system is. And one thing I think is so important to consider is what our body needs as women foundationally in order to thrive, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But I want you to think about the feelings that you physically get in your own body when you have certain emotions. And this kind of proves my point of the nervous system is kind of like a portal, and your body does actually show signs or tell a story of what's happening on a deeper level. So let's think about when you don't trust somebody, when there's somebody out there that you don't trust and you get around them and you just feel this feeling deep in your gut, and it's a physical feeling of like a pit in your stomach, like, oh, I do not trust this person or whatever. Or think about like you can physically feel that. You can physically feel sick from that. You can physically just feel distraught from that. Or think about sometime when you've gotten really good news and you feel like God is really, really looking out for you. Or when somebody tells a scary story and literally the hairs on your body stand up. These are just a few simple signs of what the body is telling us. And when we think of our physical bodies as women, our physical bodies are tied much more to the spiritual side of things and to the emotional side of things than men. And you can probably, I mean, I don't think that's super far-fetched thing to say. Women are more emotional beings, and therefore when we feel emotions very deeply, we can almost feel them in our body. And I think it's by design, and I don't think it's just a coincidence that most women struggle with deep feelings of unsafety or unappreciation, or just feeling lost or overworked, um, or whatever. And women feel these feelings, and women are also the sickest, I think, of our population. 80% of autoimmune cases are women. 80% or more of metabolic issues are women. So things like weight loss resistance, PCOS, I mean, men can't have PCOS, but stick with me here. Things like pre-diabetes, all of that. Like, it is mostly women struggling with these things. So today I'm going to dig in a little bit about what the foundations are for us as women in our bodies to start to thrive. Because there is a foundational component, there is an actual foundational piece to the puzzle when it comes to what we're supposed to do in order to thrive in our own bodies and what we need. And there is one particular thing that we need, and it is so foundational for us to feel safe in our own bodies, and that is safety. Women have to feel safe. If you want to get anywhere with your health, if you want to get any kick things to the curb as far as even your autoimmune issues or hormone issues are concerned, the first thing you need to do is to feel safe. And I don't think that we should sleep on this. I don't think this is anything that should be underrated or understated. Most women, subconsciously at least these days, don't feel safe. They are in survival mode all the time. And honestly, most of the clients that I meet with, they know that they're in survival mode. They recognize they're in survival mode. Some of them have even told me, like, Sarah, I thrive in survival mode. That's the only way I know how to function is if I'm in survival mode, because I don't think I know how to relax. And we get addicted to survival mode. It is actually possible for us to become addicted to the stress, addicted to the cortisol, addicted to all those things, because that is a state we're used to living in. So when I talk about safety, I don't mean that every woman out there thinks that they are. I think it's in the little things. It's in our light exposure. It's in our messed up sleep-wake cycles. It's in our being providers, some of us being the main provider for our household, having a lot of tasks to do, like putting a lot of weight on yourself, carrying a lot of the weight on your own, such as if you work full time, then you go home and you are the main caretaker for your children, and then you also have other things you're trying to do way too much. And how this kind of ties into the hormones and everything is that when we're thinking about the human body, and that's what hormones are. Hormones are little chemical messengers that tell your body certain messaging, and your body responds to that messaging with certain processes. And if the messaging is off, then your body is going to be off. And one thing that I show clients every single time I meet with them, well, not every single time, but I show this to every single client, either in our first or second or third meeting, depending on where people are starting from. I'll show them what I call my hormone hierarchy. And this is actually a pyramid that shows how hormones are related to one another in this episode, but it's important for you to know that when we're thinking about hormones and how they are the foundational piece to our health, we need to know that there are three foundational hormones. That these are three hormones easier to correct everything else in the body. And I'm sure you've heard of these because they are a hot topic in health and people talk. And that's so much of why I started this podcast, because I wanted a long form way to explain to you important principles that you are missing from social media and 6-second clips that give you just a small look into health and not the whole picture. So these three foundational hormones that dictate everything that happens: cortisol and oxytocin. Insulin is your blood sugar hormone, and I'm sure you've heard of it with the glucose revolution that came out as a book that came out a few years ago. It got everybody riled up about blood sugar, and it's so important. Your blood sugar is so important. And even if you don't have diabetes, even if you don't have pre-diabetes, you still need to control your blood sugar, because even if it's slightly off, that can be the difference between you having energy during the day, you being able to sleep. It dictates so much. The things that it actually does in the body are actually endless. So insulin is controlled by the food that you eat, mostly, whether you have a balanced meal and have protein or not, or if you eat too many carbs. What happens in the body is you eat carbs without enough protein, fat, or fiber, and or you don't have enough physical activity in your lifestyle. And what happens is your blood sugar raises. The sugar in your bloodstream, the glucose in your bloodstream rises, and that insulin is released. And it actually takes that blood sugar and stores it in the body. And there's a few different places it can be stored, but I'm going to talk about that in another video. All you need to know is that insulin is your main hormone that controls your blood sugar, which controls just how you feel, your weight, your energy, your mood, all the things every single day. Now, another thing that happens is, or another thing that can raise insulin levels is actually cortisol, which is the next foundational hormone. And this cortisol has been, my gosh, cortisol has been such a hot topic in health for the last few years. I could bark at how much people talk about cortisol, yet they don't know what it is. So let me enlighten you. Cortisol is your stress hormone, and your body doesn't know the difference between you being stressed about something at work and you running away from a bear. And so when you get stressed about something, even if it's small, cortisol rises because that is your body's signal, your body's messaging to the rest of your body that, oh my goodness, Sarah's stressed. We've got to do something. She might be running away from a bear. Insulin, release the hounds, release the blood sugar, let the blood sugar go into her bloodstream so she has fuel to run away from this bear or to fight for her life or do whatever she needs to do. When in reality, maybe I'm having a confrontational conversation at work, or maybe I'm just stressed about a few things in life going on. And if you're constantly stressed, that message is constantly being sent to your cells. Survival mode, survival mode. Let her survive. Fight or flight. We've got to preserve every calorie we get. We've got to create adipose fat tissue around her internal organs, on her stomach and in her face to support her cranial. We've got to make sure that she is okay. Don't burn any calories. We may need them. That is what your body is saying to itself when you're constantly stressed. And another thing that actually really has an effect on cortisol is whether your blood sugar drops. So if your insulin is dysregulated, if you starve yourself, your cortisol will rise. And also if you're stressed, your cortisol will rise. And if you have too much caffeine, too much stimulation, your cortisol will rise. And even your light exposure can sometimes cause cortisol to rise. So I'm going to have an entire video on cortisol I will have an entire video on circadian rhythms and light exposure and how freaking important it is, because it truly is a foundation of health. But we'll loosely talk about it right now. So cortisol is not only your survival hormone, and it is influenced by your light exposure a good bit. And when we have light exposure, a lot of blue light exposure, when we're constantly exposed to bright lights from our screens, artificial light that makes no sense with the daytime, that can cause our cortisol to be out of whack. That was a huge thing for me. When I first started my business 2 years ago, I was also working at a hospital, and I was also, which this is a whole nother story in and of itself, I was also selling health programs for Dr. Will Cole, and it was extremely stressful. And it was the most stressed I've ever been, and it's the most I've ever stayed up, messaging my body and saying, this girl is not okay. She is in survival mode. We've got to do something. We've got to help her because she is in survival mode. And a huge piece of that was the fact that I was always blasting myself with blue light. Like, I was not getting up in the morning and rising with the sun and slowly waking my body up and then having good sunlight exposure during the day. And then as the sun sets, lowering my light exposure inside. I was constantly being blasted with blue light. I'd wake up before the sunrise, read some emails, do some stuff. Then I would work during the day, not go outside and get any sunlight during the day. And then at night, I would be on my computer a bunch and then also be at the same time trying to decompress with TV, which is not decompressing, it's just stressing yourself out. I would have all this blue light exposure, and my body thought at all times that I had to be at my most awake. So that's another thing. Cortisol, there's so many intricate parts of cortisol, and that is a huge piece. The first two things that I work on with people in their health is their insulin and their cortisol levels. First thing, because so highly tied to your diet, so highly tied to your lifestyle, and something that is pretty controllable if you're willing to actually do the work to control it. But if you don't feel safe, if you are constantly overworking yourself, always doing HIIT workouts, if you're constantly stressed, if you're constantly in survival mode, your cortisol and insulin is going to be so out of whack. And that is what's going to cause everything else to be so imbalanced. And it all started with you not feeling safe in your environment in general. And there's a lot of different ways we can feel this, and it's different, but it does come down to that one thing: safety. We need to feel safe. And when our body doesn't feel safe, she does not lie. She will send us messages saying, I don't feel safe. It's just you having to recognize those messages, that storyline, that narrative that your body is telling you. Because a lot of times we see these signals, we see that our body, our beautiful body that God designed for us, is telling us, I don't feel safe, I don't feel good, that's why your hair is falling out, that's why you've gained weight, that's why your digestion's off, that's why you get bloated even when you drink water. So I am back. It's a day later, and I left off talking about how when our cortisol is high, we have a lot of different symptoms and we have something deeper that is happening in our bodies. And she is a great communicator, our bodies are. And she loves to tell us what's up, and we just have to listen to her. And I think a lot of women kind of come into their health journey thinking that their body is betraying them and that their body is actually the enemy and that it's messed up, that there's something wrong with them. But I think it's important for you to know that God designed your body and God does not make mistakes with his design, and you are not some special different snowflake. Your body is telling you that something is wrong, either with your lifestyle, your nutrition, your heart, and when I say your heart, I mean your spiritual heart, not your physical heart, although that could be a sign as well. Your body, she is trying to tell you something. And I say she, I personify the body in a way because our bodies are just that intelligent that I think it would be easier for us to personify our bodies. But our bodies want us to work with them and not against them. And that's kind of where natural nutrition and knowing your physiology, knowing what's happening, what the symptoms mean, doing testing and all that stuff, that is where that comes to play, where you are working hand in hand with your body and you're not working against it. Like if you were to just cover up your symptoms with a band-aid, such as medication or whatnot, and ignore your symptoms, your body will find other ways to tell you that something's wrong, but also you're working against your body because you're only making it worse because you're continuing down the same road and you're not changing anything necessarily about your lifestyle. And when you stop putting that band-aid on, things will just probably be even worse. I do want to talk about the third hormone that really has so much to do with your health in general. And this actually is a hormone that I put on the back burner for a long time in my practice because I felt as though it was out of my scope of practice and I felt as though I was not equipped to talk about this hormone, and I'm still learning a lot about it, but that is oxytocin. And now I talk about it because what is scope of practice? Nobody seems these days to follow scope of practice. When it comes to the things we see on Instagram, the things we see on the internet, the things we see on TikTok, nobody is actually educated formally on what they're saying. Very few people are, if they are educated formally, and most everybody is going outside of their scope of practice. So I don't really say this as a dietitian, but I talk about this hormone woman to woman. Oxytocin is something that usually we see with women who are postpartum, oxytocin being a little messed up, maybe that being a reason why a woman might struggle with postpartum depression or have issues with her milk supply or her hormones being out of whack because oxytocin is out of whack. And when it comes to the physiology behind oxytocin being out of whack, that has a lot to do with birth and how you birth and a lot of the midwifery side of things and how your body does go through this humongous change and shift when you have a baby. But outside, we'll talk about outside of pregnancy and stuff. Outside of that, oxytocin is your love hormone. And oxytocin is your hormone that gets boosted when you live by your biological design, where you live what I consider biblically. When you have a community, when you have good boundaries, when you have a good relationship with yourself, with God, with those around you, when you're doing things with your hands, when you're letting yourself rest and restore, that is where oxytocin is balanced. Oxytocin is our love hormone because when us humans are living by our biological design, when we're deeply embedded into a community and we feel cared for and we feel safe and we feel as though we have people to confide in and we are not living on an island and basically just roughhousing life by ourselves, when we are actually deeply embedded in community and have good relationships, so like marriage, having a healthy marriage where you communicate with your partner, where you're able to express your feelings and where you're able to actually have either healthy boundaries or healthy communication with the other people in your life, that is where oxytocin is often balanced. Also, a huge part of us living by our biological design is, and our bodies feeling safe, is letting ourselves rest. Letting ourselves have a day off, letting ourselves enjoy the fruits of our labor and to enjoy life just in general. I don't know if you've ever read Ecclesiastes, but if you want some inspiration on enjoying life, that's a great book to read. But basically, we're meant to Sabbath. We're meant to have a day of rest. We're meant to enjoy the fruits of our labor at least a little bit, enjoying a good meal around a table full of people and having community with others, being able to do something with our hands, especially as women, something creative like sewing, cooking, baking. Now, I know I sound like I'm naming off all these home ec things, but traditionally this is what a lot of women do. And whether that is crocheting or pottery or drawing, watercolor, maybe, actually putting your Pinterest board into your house and decorating and doing things with our hands and having a project. Our bodies, there's so many studies about how our psychology and how our physiology actually shifts when we are able to have a creative outlet where we work, and the dopamine hits and oxytocin that we feel when we're able to put our hands in dirt or when we're able to make something with our hands, and even how that shifts our mind and our ability to think more clearly and our ability to be more focused and more present where we are. And I think that's a huge part of us, hearing from God and not having all this noise in our head, because a lot of the issue with our bodies not feeling safe is that there's so much noise going on, either physically or just in our heads. And this is a great way to balance that. And I know that a lot of times when we think about our bodies and what might be imbalanced with our bodies, we think, oh, my relationships don't have anything to do with that. Your relationships with yourself, with your work, with your people, with your husband, with everybody, that has a huge impact. For one, have been able to physically feel the impacts of my relationships, what they have on my body. I've been able to physically feel how when I don't rest and when I don't Sabbath and when I don't do things that are fulfilling to me, I become drained. And that's one thing that I've worked on in the past with myself in the past 6 months so hard on. I realized my cortisol was high. I realized that my body was in fight or flight mode and survival mode all the time. And one of the biggest things that I did for myself was to really focus and really invest in rest and to really invest in doing things I enjoy and to really get back to my friendships where I feel most comfortable. And thank God I have a great husband who I can talk to about many of these things, and even if he doesn't get it, he will try to get it. After these last few months of me taking a rest, taking Sabbath, and my husband has done the same, us finding boundaries and enjoying the fruits of our labor, like our cortisol has gone down, our adrenal fatigue has been really healed. I can tell with even my physique, like how things have changed and shifted back into more of a more honestly visually appealing feminine figure. It's worked. It works so much. And I don't think anybody should sleep on the three foundational hormones, insulin, cortisol, and oxytocin, and making sure you are supporting those three hormones in order to have the fully feminine embodied body that you deserve to have while you are on this earth. Because if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. That's kind of a stretch to say because we still have God, we still have our faith, but I'm talking about like day-to-day, like worldly things outside of the spiritual realm. Like if we don't have our health, we struggle to focus on relationships. We struggle to go to the grocery store. We struggle to go outside. We might not feel comfortable or confident enough in ourselves to do the things that we were placed on this earth to do. And I think a huge part of fulfilling our life's purpose is having enough comfort and confidence and energy within our own bodies to actually execute the plan. So that is the foundational part of having a healthy body, a healthy physical body. And as you can see from a lot of the things that I said, the body is never by itself. I mentioned a lot of mindset, a lot of spiritual things when I talked about the body today. And I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper into the mind and spirit of it all in the next 2 episodes of this podcast. But I encourage you to maybe have a reflective journal entry. Find a piece of notebook paper or take your journal and really think about everything hard that you've been through in your life and how you feel like that has physically affected your body. And I also want you to think about your nutrition and reflect on how you eat and how you live your day-to-day life. Walk through a day in the life of yourself. That's something I do with every client the first time we meet. Walk me through what every single day is like for you. And I'm not even talking about nutrition. I'm talking about movement, when you wake up, what you have to eat, your stress levels, what you do at work, what's your life like. Like, having that reflective time is so eye-opening to see, why is my body acting like this? Why is my body responding like this? What is the deal here? And if we're able to see that, and then able to pinpoint, okay, is it oxytocin? Is it insulin? Is it cortisol? Is it all of the above? A lot of times it's all of the above. How can we manage to build some actual tangible bite-sized steps towards healing our bodies that's not overwhelming, that's following a framework, because you are actually focusing on your foundational hormones and you're giving your body the safety that it needs to thrive beyond just those foundational hormones. Because once you really help your insulin levels, you feel amazing. Oh my gosh, you feel amazing. Once you are able to manage your cortisol or fix your long-term cortisol dysfunction, which is HPA dysfunction, which I'll get into it in another episode. But once you're able to fix your cortisol levels and your stress levels, you will feel amazing. And then if you're able to really do things that support your oxytocin levels, you're going to feel really fulfilled. And when you have all those things, it makes it easier and it clears the way for you to see if there's anything else happening. For example, progesterone is often it's imbalanced because of stress, because of cortisol or oxytocin or something. But, if you have really chronically low testosterone or really chronically low progesterone or really chronically high estrogen, those are very, very, very hard to fix and very hard to pinpoint unless you do an actual Dutch hormone test. They're very hard to fix if you haven't fixed the insulin, cortisol, and oxytocin. So I always tell clients that really focusing on the foundational hormones and what your body needs and making your body feel safe will build the good foundation for you to build off of and fix potentially your low testosterone levels, or to detox your body, start to detox your body properly and fix those high estrogen levels, or to help your body feel nourished and well and good enough to produce a lot of progesterone, which is our beauty, youthful, feminine hormone that we need so much of and we don't get enough of when those foundational hormones aren't balanced. And also, even though over the past year, in my practice, I've really tried to talk with clients about how much weight and body image clouds our vision for what our health should actually be. We should not only be focused on our body image and our weight. There is so much more to life. There is so much more to our bodies. There is so much more than just the aesthetics of it all. But I will say that most 90% of clients come to me because they want to change their physical body and they care about the aesthetics and they want to have a body that they're proud of and confident in. And by all means, girlfriend, I am supporting you on that journey. But if you don't fix these foundational hormones, it's going to be very hard for ever lose the weight it wants to lose. And this is so true for women who have struggled chronically with weight loss resistance. When we're able to balance your foundational hormones, that gives you metabolic flexibility to burn fat cells and to actually have the body that you want. But you do not need to lose weight to get healthy. You need to get healthy in order to lose the weight. So when your body is holding on to fat tissue, it is because there is a safety issue. Your body does not feel safe. Now, some of you might have some body dysmorphia. Some of you may see your body and you have a healthy, flourishing body, flourishing figure, and you don't think it's enough. That is different. That is different. We were meant as women to have some fat on us. We were meant to be curvy. We were meant to have breasts. We were meant to have glutes. We were meant to have big booties. Like, we were meant to have those things. Now, if you genetically don't have those things as much, I think that's okay. But I think that's important to still keep in mind that there is actually a healthy amount of fat for you to have. But all of that aside, I hope you enjoyed this episode about me rambling on about the most foundational part of our body's health, which is safety, security, emotionally, physically, using the three foundational hormones, insulin, oxytocin, and cortisol, as a blueprint or a roadmap to getting our physical bodies healthier and making our physical bodies feel safer so that we can have flourishing health and love our bodies and love our life. I hope that you actually do reflect on your physical health with a little journal entry and really see where that takes you. But until the next time that we meet and we get to chat about health, stay healthy, keep becoming fully feminine, and have a great week.